So we've used a mask to draw attention to the area that we want to focus on and to blur the areas that aren't so important and create a nice selective focus effect. Next thing to do is just to click on the background layer again so we're not associated with this layer mask, and create a new adjustment layer to desaturate the image. So go to Hue Saturation and then drag saturation all the way down to -100 and push brightness up a couple of notches just to give it a little bit of a kick. Click OK, and you'll notice that because this layer is below the coloured blur layer, it's not affecting that layer. So let's just drag it above the blur layer now, and the hue saturation layer is now desaturating everything below it, including the blur layer and the original source layer. Now for a decent black and white shot, we want a bit of a kick to the contrast. We want some white whites and some black blacks. So we can do that with another adjustment layer, and this time we're going to go to levels. And that lets us adjust the input levels of the shot, and we can change the shadows and the highlights by dragging this slider here for shadows and this slider here for the highlights. So let's give the highlights an extra kick by just dragging this one to the right to about 2, 3, 7. So we've changed the value of the highlights and let's brighten them up. Now let's darken the shadows by dragging this one to about 23, and you can see that maybe about 11 or 10 actually. So you can see that the shadows are now getting darker at the far end of the shadow range there. Let me just click OK to apply that, and let me just turn this on and off to show you. You've got a higher contrast image with brighter highlights and darker shadows. And let's have another look. If you want to adjust an adjustment layer, just double click on it, and you can then tweak the midtones as well by dragging this slider. So we change that to about 1.53. We're brightening up the midtones, and that's what the image was suffering from. A lot of detail was missing in those midtones. So if I just take that up to about here, we've now got darker shadows, brighter midtones and brighter highlights. And that's looking a lot better now. There's a nice range of tones from shadows, midtones to highlights. So you can adjust adjustment layers anytime you like. So there's before, a little bit dull, and there's after, much more kick and impact. Now what we'll do is create a vignette effect just to darken the corners, and that helps draw attention to the main subject. So let's create a new layer by clicking on the Create New Layer icon. Let's call this one Vignette. Hit return. There we go. And let's use a marquee to do this. What I'll do is click and select an elliptical marquee, set its feather to something quite strong like 30. Control minus to zoom out so I can actually see the whole image, and make sure you've got the new selection icon clicked in the options bar. Then what you can do is hold the Alt key to draw from the center point and click and drag to create a circle. If you hold Shift, it will constrain it to a perfect circle. So go up to about there at the edges. We just want it to be softening around the edges like so. Let go of the mouse, and there's our circle. Then what we can do is inverse that, but let's go to select and inverse it so it's now selecting the outside areas, and we can then edit fill those with a color like black, or the foreground color which is also black. Click OK, and there you have your selection. Now what I've done is change the opacity already, so let's put that up to 100. That's what you'll see, and you can Control D to deselect. The marching ants are now disappeared. Take the opacity down to about 50 perhaps, and reduce this blending mode to overlay so you get a more subtle darkening around the edge. Let's take that down a little bit more like so. And to enhance the vignette effect, I'm going to create a new layer and do the same thing again with my marquee selection, like so. I'm just going to use this to make a vignette on the right hand side of the image now. What I'll do is feather it a little bit more, and you can feather after you've drawn it by going to select feather and typing in a higher value like 19 perhaps, so it'll be much softer. Inverse the selection, fill it with black, and Control D to deselect. This time I'm going to change it to overlay again, but keep a slightly darker opacity like so. I'm going to pop it underneath the previous layer for a more subtle effect, and then use the eraser tool on an opacity of 100% just to get rid of the vignette on the left here. but leave it on the right. So it's darkening slightly more at this side of the image, just to give it a bit more visual variety. And there you have a monochrome makeover with a variety of different techniques. And what we'll do in the separate movie is just look at a way to add a border to this so that you can enhance the image with an attractive border.